It's 6 p.m. You have just finished the workday, and you are completely mentally drained. Yet you still have a plan. Tonight is the night you finally tackle that personal coding project, or dive into that evening study session. But first, you simply need to unwind. So you sit down on the couch, turn on the television, or open up YouTube and social media just to catch your breath. 2 or 3 hours slip by. You have technically stopped working, but when you think about starting that planned project, your brain still feels sluggish, foggy, and completely incapable of initiating the task. It is incredibly easy to assume that if an activity requires zero physical effort and feels relaxing, it must naturally be restoring your cognitive energy. When that energy fails to return, the common diagnosis is a lack of willpower. This frames the problem as a character flaw, overlooking the mechanical reality of how mental resources actually recover.
This persistent mental fog suggests that our standard methods of relaxation might be operating on an outdated model of how cognitive energy works. To understand our mental states more clearly, we can look at the smartphone in our pocket. A phone essentially operates in 3 distinct modes: high drain, battery saver, and charging. Navigating the transition from a long workday to a productive evening requires a closer look at the difference between simply slowing down and actually powering back up. During your workday, you enter a focused cognitive cycle. In the smartphone analogy, this is the equivalent of running your heaviest, most demanding applications, like high-end gaming or GPS navigation. This diagram illustrates exactly what happens during that high drain phase. Notice how rapidly the main battery icon depletes. That drop represents the active burn of your limited cognitive resources, specifically the draining of your sustained attention and your working memory. When the workday ends, you close those demanding work applications and open lighter entertainment applications. The rapid drain immediately stops, and your system switches to battery saver mode. This state feels highly deceptive. As the chart shows, the battery level flattens out and hovers steadily at 20%. Because the sharp drop stops, it creates the psychological illusion that you are taking a break. Moving to a lower effort task successfully reduces the intensity of your mental effort, but it fails to initiate any actual energy restoration. Why is the brain still trapped in a state of consumption while you are seemingly just relaxing in front of a screen? Because entertainment still requires a hidden cognitive workload. Even an easy television show forces your brain to interpret new images, track an ongoing narrative, and regulate your emotional reactions to the story. Short-form content poses a specific danger. This decision tree maps the endless neurological loop of scrolling through a feed. Your brain is forced to process a new image, make a micro-decision about whether to stay, execute a swipe, and repeat the process over and over again. Entertainment and social media are not inherently harmful, but mechanically, they must be categorized strictly as cognitive inputs rather than mental breaks. The core of the problem comes down to recognizing the strict boundary between cognitive consumption and cognitive restoration. As long as your brain is processing incoming data, it remains physiologically incapable of creating the low-input conditions required for deep mental recovery. If lowering consumption doesn't restore your energy, what is the biological equivalent of plugging the phone into the wall? It is state 3, charging, and it is defined by the deliberate, total cessation of all cognitive input. True disengagement requires specific offline actions. This means resting quietly, moving your body, taking a walk without a podcast, or simply sleeping. These low-stimulation actions are the only mechanisms that allow your attention to fully detach from processing external data. Complete disengagement is the absolute prerequisite to genuinely transitioning your brain out of a depleted state and preparing it for new, demanding work. To bridge the gap between tasks, we use the cognitive cycle recovery loop: a focused cognitive cycle, energy depletion, a recovery activity, and an energy reassessment. Expanding the recovery node reveals a strict barrier, blocking all incoming data before your evening project. You do not need to eliminate television or social media from your life. You only need to permanently strip them of the label recovery tools. If you want the mental capacity to actually tackle your meaningful goals, you have to abandon the battery saver strategy. Taking control of your cognitive cycles requires recognizing that true recovery only begins when you finally unplug from the input and plug into the recharge.